of an FX, which is something that a lot of people were really looking for. And in this first impression, we're going to give you all of those details. I'm Jimmy Lewis with Dirt Bike Test, and today we're talking about this 2023 Yamaha WR450F. This is Yamaha's, basically, it's a YZ with a headlight, or it's their competition trail bike. And it's been in the Yamaha stable forever. There used to be WR250 two-stroke. Some people really love these bikes. The WR in the four-stroke world has always been just a little bit behind the YZ in its trajectory and its development. And we just got a brand new 23 YZ450. But the WR platform the last couple of years has popped up into the generation previous to this YZ platform. So to start it out, we never bothered to ride this bike completely box stock the way it's delivered. And there's an interesting story behind this. Since it's delivered as a bike you can take out in the trails, and for a while they were actually going to target this bike to be green sticker legal. But California made some goofy rules that now you have to have an evaporative system on your gas tank, on your vent lines, just like you do on your car, just like the dual sport motorcycles do. Like, Yamaha had no time to meet those demands. So it is not even sold in California. This bike, you cannot buy it in California. It's a 49 state model. With that, headlights, it comes with a very quiet muffler. The throttle only opens up partially, and there's a very big restrictor inside of the intake. So since we're using this as a competition dirt bike, we're able to take those things off. So the first thing that we did was remove the throttle stop and remove the intake restrictor. We still had the stock muffler on it, and it runs really good. It's super quiet. Oh yeah, there's also a teeny tiny restrictor that can pretty much, you have to work at it, but it can be removed out of the muffler. You're not hacking it out. It's still a quiet muffler, but you're taking the smallest pea shooter little guy out of that thing. So we did our first rides like that because that's generally been the best way to ride it as a pure kind of single track trail bike for someone who's not a high level rider. It gets really good traction. It's smooth and controllable. It still goes plenty fast. In fact, I don't think that the peak power is really that much limited by the muffler. It's just the way that it delivers it. It gets up there, I would say, a lot slower. It doesn't rev as quick. Well, some places it kind of revs quicker, and then it just doesn't rev as quicker. It's not as throttle responsive as you would come to expect, or as we did when we started switching mufflers and doing other things. So the bike stock is still, it's definitely super quiet. You don't have to worry about passing sound tests or anything like that. It still has the spark arrestor in it. You're all good there. We added an FMFQ because it just gives the bike way better throttle response. It's still quiet. And of course it loses about a pound, which isn't bad. This bike comes with the headlights, 18-inch wheel, kickstand, all the stuff you would expect. It comes with a cooling fan, which is super awesome. The gas tank is still a little bit small, but you're going to be able to get, I always say 60 to 80 miles, depending on how hard you're pushing it, how much you're twisting it, of trail riding, no problem. You could probably push 80 a little bit if you're careful, riding conservatively, stuff like that. But then we're also riding it kind of out in the desert or in higher gears and covering more ground. If you're on tight technical stuff, expect that to go down a little bit. The bike's narrow. With the newer chassis compared to the older one, it gave the bike a lighter, kind of more, we'll call it more nimble, applicable feel. And they also did a lot of work to the suspension. And the suspension valving is actually quite a bit, it's more, we'll call it FX direction. So the old ones used to kind of feel dead, a little mushy. And it made the bike feel stable yet heavy. And the newer one feels light and nimble. Like, it doesn't, like most Yamahas, they don't feel super light when you're like picking them up on the stand or, having to pick it up off the ground. Like, they don't feel light that way. But when you get on them and start riding them, this WR adopts that kind of light, agile, very responsive feeling in the handling department. The suspension was definitely stiff when we first started riding it. It took a little bit for it to break in and start moving freely. I would say especially the fork, and you definitely want to make sure you bleed the air out of the forks. So nobody has complained about WR or YZ or FX suspension for a long time, and we're not going to start here, but it takes a little while to break in, and if you're not ready for it being a little bit stiffer, you're going to have to get used to it, because this isn't the only bike that's doing this. It's just sort of the trend that you can make the bike feel so much lighter and so much more agile by kind of, we'll call it holding it up in the stroke. And so there are some different valving changes from this to FX, but it's not as drastic as it was before. And it's almost to the point where I would say you could take this bike out onto a motocross track and ride it very similar to an FX and still have that kind of feeling. Since this bike does have a little bit more weight on the front end, that might affect it a little bit more. But what you do notice is this thing, I think it's sprung stiffer than the older ones, and it has the same springs that the FX currently has in it. So good job to Yamaha for making it more of a competition bike. And I think, and we didn't do this because we didn't really feel the need to, you could really open up the compression clickers on this thing and get it to get mushy and kind of that planted feel if that's what you're looking for. So I think it's always a lot easier to go that direction, to soften it up too much, than it is to stiffen a bike up that's not holding itself up, because a lot of times those bikes, when you start stiffing them up, they also become really harsh. So that's where the suspension is at. I think it's an improvement. I liked it. And I think most people, when they get used to it, they won't notice it, because as many people ride their motocross bikes off-road, they have no idea what they're missing in comfort and kind of control when they come to this. Like I said, the chassis kind of follows that same thing, gives the bike a lighter feel. Don't ever feel that it's too rigid, and I never feel that it's wallowy. It's just like this really perfect blend. It reminds me of, believe it or not, the two-stroke aluminum frame that's still on the YZ125 and YZ250 two-strokes. It's just a good aluminum frame. When people complain about a lot of other stuff, it doesn't feel like it's anything in the chassis that's causing those kind of feels. So good on Yamaha. It still has that YZ, we'll call it, narrowness and everything. Although some people new to the bike will complain that the radiator, the upper part of the radiator shrouds still look and appear thin or thick. Compared to some other bikes, they look a little bit more bulbous because, of course, you kind of have the air box up in that area and the snorkels and the intakes coming out. By the way, air filter stays really clean on this bike compared to a lot of others, especially when we're riding in a lot of our silt that we have out here in Nevada. So now we're going to get to the motor. Stock motor is really good. The one thing you can do that'll make a huge difference is switch to a different tail section on the pipe, a different muffler. So we went to an FMFQ. We didn't feel the need to go to like a full open system. We wanted to keep the bike still quiet. Man, what a difference that makes. And it just makes it more competition. Now it starts revving quicker. It's a lot more free revving. It gets up to the top end power quicker. And like I said, I don't think it's making more top power, but it's making plenty. Like if you find yourself at the end of the throttle, you're doing something. We did it on the dry lake bed, okay? It goes 100 miles an hour, no problem. So don't worry about this. Then the next step we did was we installed the Yamaha Competition ECU. And this is a part that Yamaha sells, and we did it in conjunction with the Wi-Fi module and the Competition ECU. And the ECU comes with a different throttle stop, so the throttle goes wide open. And then we also installed the 2-position map switch, because the Competition ECU allows that second map switch that we like so much on YZs. And here's where it gets good. Like right away, it turns into an FX. It basically feels like it has FX mapping. So you have the light off as an aggressive map, and then you turn the light on and it's more of a subdued mellow map. They're both good, very much like the FX. We like them. But then we got into the coolest part about it. All of a sudden, you now have access to the free power tuning app. And what that does is gives you unlimited ability to tune this bike the way you want to make it work. So I went back in, called up some of my old Competition WR maps, looked at some of my FX maps. I started sending them in to the ECU And bang, I had another bike, and I had another bike, and I had another power delivery. And it got better and better. And I still don't think I'm totally there with exactly what I want. I like tinkering, but I was able to find a really good, we'll call it aggressive map, which I call it my smooth map. I tweaked my smooth map a little bit, threw it in the #1 map, and it made the aggressive map just pull better and smoother. And then I started playing around with we'll call it the second map, the less aggressive map. And what I was playing with mostly there was trying to figure out how to make the aggressive map exactly the same as the standard one, which is something I do just to, so if I'm ever switching around maps and I want to have two very similar maps in there, I kind of know how to doctor them. But then I started playing with a more mellow map, we'll call it, and was able to, add some fuel in certain areas, reduce some ignition timing, and get a really good map. And then I went extreme enduro riding, which I don't really always take a 450 4-stroke on. And then it started showing me some of the other characteristics of the bike. Yeah, it acts a lot lighter, but boy, is the motor responsive, and I wanted to tame it a little bit more. I was able to abuse the heck out of the clutch, which I know Yamaha spends a lot of time working on their clutch assembly and stuff. They've done it for a cable clutch. I was pretty impressed. Yes, I could get it really hot, but it didn't fade. But again, I wasn't abusing it. I could get the fan to come on, and the fan came on. The bike never really overheated. Even when abusing the clutch, I couldn't, I could get it to steam if I wanted to be dumb about it, but it was doing its job. And I was really I got very confident in the bike. I liked the way it was working. And so not only does it work the spectrum of going really fast, it also handles going slow. Now we're coming into this stuff like the 5-speed transmission. Generally 5-speed transmission, not so stoked. But if anybody has done it right and got the ratios right and paired them with the way that the motor responds, Yamaha has done that with this WR. It's kind of the only wide ratio 5-speed transmission. Well, most of the other transmissions are not wide ratio. The other manufacturers go to a 6-speed. But I really don't think you're giving that much up. Again, I had first gear extreme enduro stuff. It was going plenty fast in 5th gear to make me happy. The tires. I'm glad Yamaha went with the MX-33s. I like these tires. They get good traction. They're durable. On this bike, they worked. It seems like, just with the weight of the bike and everything, they're working good, where some of the other ones come with the AT81 and they get a little kind of, dancy and everything. These work in conjunction with the suspension. I was happy with that. Brakes are really good. They're not too strong and not weak at all. They have good feel and definitely never were overheating, doing anything like that. I'm trying to think of what I really want to complain about with this bike. It doesn't come with handguards, so we threw some Achirby's handguards on it. Comes with a really good skid plate standard. I like that. One other thing that can be a little bit of an issue, or it's more of an annoyance, is that the bike doesn't always start right up. Usually cold, it starts right up. But sometimes when the bike is hot and you're out riding and you stall, it can just crank, and you have to, kind of give it a couple shots. And usually if it doesn't start in the first 3 or 4 rotations, it's not going to start, and you just let off the button and then push it again. But if there's one thing, and this has kind of been a Yamaha thing since they've gone to fuel injection, they don't start right up like some of the other bikes. It's kind of one of these bikes where it's like, I like this bike. Now I want to start just really tinkering with it. And I have so much tunability. I'll make this motor into exactly anything I want. And then it's like, okay, what direction do I want to go with suspension? It's so well-rounded right now. I'm having a hard time saying, well, if I'm going to go fast out in the desert, I want to do this. It handles that. I was crawling around slow up in the mountains. It handled that too. I don't know where exactly I would compromise, maybe with a little bit more time. I would find something, but super stoked on this. Maybe my big concern will be, can I get a big enough gas tank to do longer range stuff like I can in some of the other bikes? The Yamaha is kind of limited because of the airbox and stuff. Maintenance-wise, durability-wise, I don't even give it a second thought. These things have been bulletproof. I'm really happy with them. You're gonna get lots of time out of this. Don't worry about what the manual says. Just run it. Change your oil, keep your air filter clean, and everything's gonna be good. So overall, super happy with the Yamaha WR450. I'm going to be definitely putting some more time on it. Got some big rides planned for the summer, and I think this is going to be the bike I'm taking. We will see. So with that, leave your questions, comments in the lines down below. Send us an email. And as always, you can support Dirt Bike Test through some of our things. Just click on the website and go to the Support Us page. So I'm Jimmy Lewis. This is the 23 Yamaha WR450, and we will see you out on the trail. Cheers.